This video is going to cover how to build a machine using Vagrant by HashiCorp. This is a base build that I've used for some basic vulnerability testing and adding some sample vulnerable apps for a variety of ethical hacking. I'm on a MacBook Pro M3 with 24 gig of memory. I've installed all the necessary stuff. So in the README file here, so in my repo that I have on GitHub, under the MacBook M series folder here, there is a Vagrant file that we're going to use to deploy a VM on my machine here. So I have installed both of these. I've installed VMware Fusion. So let's go ahead and get started. I've downloaded my repo to my local machine, and I'll just show you here. So it's very simple to get a Vagrant file to create a VM. So we're going to type in the word Vagrant. We're going to use the word up, provider, I think it's -- provider equals VMware desktop. So now what's going to happen is it's going to clone down. I'm running Ubuntu 2204 currently, and this takes about 2 to 3 minutes to deploy. But as it deploys, it's also going through once the VM is deployed and it's detected an IP address, the additional Ansible playbooks. Ansible is a DevOps tool that is used to provide automation for deploying all kinds of things on a Linux machine. So in my build here I have, and I'm going to leave this up, but there is a base playbook that has some basic things. There's a Docker playbook that I use that deploys Docker, and then there is a playbook that I have for the sample vulnerable apps. I learned this through in a project called Samurai WTF. This is by Secure Ideas. I originally tried to deploy Samurai WTF on a MacBook, and I ran into some issues because of the M series CPU, and out of it though I was able to modify the project and really didn't. So right now you notice right here in VMware Fusion I have a Kali machine, and now this is the machine that's being deployed. And let's go back to the output here so you can see what's happening. It does take a little bit to go through all the updates, so updating a VM is critical. But what I was saying about Samurai WTF, I didn't even know I could use Vagrant. So this is something that's really useful that I've used both on a MacBook as well as a Windows machine with Hyper-V. So in the Vagrant file, there is a provider for Hyper-V. So the instructions are a little different when you're using a Windows machine and Hyper-V, but the idea is the same. I'm just showing this because my local machine that I do all of the ethical hacking is a MacBook Pro. So we'll go ahead and let this get finished, but it creates a local user called 52 pickup. The password is in the file. It's example 123 exclamation point, and I suggest you to change that, but this is mostly for me to run local machines. I use this image for doing other types of ethical hacking. I continue to add vulnerable apps to this image. So if you want to check back right now, I believe there's 5 or 6 in here. If you look over here, this is the output for the Vagrant file. Here's the vulnerable apps output. So I've tried to capture some of the output. So if you're trying this on your own, and notice here as it's going through, it's creating a group. It creates the Samurai user. I'd left that in there. That was from the Samurai WTF original deploy. And surprisingly, this doesn't take that long to deploy a VM that is ready for use locally. So I try to do all of my ethical hacking and testing local to my machine, which is best practice. And once in a while, I'll deploy on my home network to a remote machine. But when you're doing ethical hacking, you want to make sure that you have permission to what you're doing. And there are plenty of applications that are out there that allow this. So just to go into the Vuln app playbook, I do have I create a code folder and it changes the owner to 52 pickup. But I pull down Juice Shop. That's the first one I pull down. I pull down WebGoat. These are both off of that are samples that are off of OWASP. And there's an API one, the Wrong Secrets one. This is the one I've been focused on mostly recently. I do have another video that's going to talk about being able to RDP to a deployed container, which is pretty cool. So that's under the RDP container folder. And then the sample web application, so that does some additional connections here. This is part of the syntax that runs a shell command. And then here is one for doing some other connections. So it's really handy to be able to, as I learn and add and find out other applications that I can run on my local machine, it's useful for getting better at ethical hacking. So it still is deploying Docker. It does take a minute to push that out, but hopefully you find this video to be useful. I do deploy Docker Compose too, so that's a useful tool if you're familiar with how Docker works. But now it's into the last playbook here, and then after all the playbooks gets deployed, it will reboot this VM and then it'll be ready. So the last thing I'll show after the applications are deployed is SSH local on my local Mac to the VM and then start to interact with it. So I found it to be useful and automated, and to have a machine that is ready with some sample apps, and if something happens on the machine, I can just type in Vagrant space destroy and it will destroy it, and then I can bring up a new one based on the automation. One of the things I do that for the examples here, as this deploys, I'm going to open up another folder here. We're going to, so I'll type in ls-la, and you're going to notice a .vagrant file. So we'll go into .vagrant. That is actually where the files are stored for the machine. So if I go into machines, the Ubuntu server is here. So just in the GitHub ignore file or git ignore file, I ignore the .vagrant file, but for the purposes of this video, I wanted to show you where the files are at when you actually get into it. So we're just about done here. It's deploying the last vulnerable app, which I believe when I pull it down, it actually pulls down the repo and does an adjustment to the compose file, which does a replacement for running on localhost, because I like to have it deployed if I wanted to deploy this to a remote machine, and then it actually builds the image. So this is the syntax. So most of the time I would just pull down the regular image from the registries on the internet, but this, I wanted to make a slight adjustment to that. So the automation's flexible, and once you kind of get it figured out, it's very useful to be able to use in your ethical hacking journey. So, but we're on the very last one here. So you can, as you follow along here in the Ansible, if you come up in here under the base, this is where it does some basic stuff, where it does some prerequisites, installs some additional applications. Probably don't need all these, but I just kind of left them from the Samurai, but wouldn't hurt to go through and understand when you do deploy a machine. Good to know what you're deploying. I do deploy NetTools. That's a legacy thing where you can do like netstat and ifconfig and some other stuff. So that's another useful tool. If you find additional packages that you find useful in your journey, it is definitely nice to be able to just put them in a file, destroy the VM, run vagrant up -- provider equals. So yeah, we're starting to reboot the VM. Here's the VM rebooting right now, and I'll pull up another window, and I'll type in SSH 52 pickup at 172.16.133.184. I have tested on others, that's why it's showing this here, so I haven't cleaned that up. So I'm just going to say yes, I'll trust it. You could build into your automation a public key as well. I just, for ease, I just do. So here's my VM. So we'll do sudo docker images. It shows you. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. But here's the sample. There's 6 of them currently, and these are the images. So if I want to start to deploy like JuShop, for example, I could deploy that and then do some ethical hacking from my Mac or another machine. So hopefully you found this video useful. This has been a core thing, and I will reference this video and other videos that I do. So hopefully the screen videos and some of the background here will help you understand it, and good luck. If you have any questions, put a comment down in the YouTube.